Hello. On behalf of the San Diego Foundation, thank you so much for joining us today to announce the launch of the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center. Today, we'll provide an exclusive opportunity for those attending, our fund holders, partners, staff, government leaders, and members of the media to learn more about the center and what its establishment will mean for our region, our cities, our neighborhoods, and most especially, our families. But I'd like to begin by addressing two questions. Why should the San Diego Foundation establish such an entity, and why do so now? In times of great emergency, community foundations are uniquely positioned to put their philanthropic leadership and deep cross-sector relationships to work for all who are impacted. We assess the need quickly, immediately gather together funding partners, and nimbly grant out dollars to critical nonprofit programs. Since the pandemic descended upon the United States in March 2020, more than 800 community foundations like ours raised and granted billions of dollars to nonprofit organizations to assist with food security, childcare, housing, utility assistance, education, broadband access, employment, medical support, and much more. This work revealed some of our greatest structural challenges: health risks, economic instability, and inequity of opportunity. We also recognize that relief is short-term, and a robust, equitable recovery will require us to address major structural challenges. With current and upcoming federal legislation, not since the 1930s New Deal era has our nation seen this level of infrastructure funding available for place-based public investment. And our San Diego region must be able to compete with the entire nation for these vital dollars. The Policy and Innovation Center is our response to the need for integrated, collaborative policy solutions that enable transformational systems change. The mission of the center is to develop, test, and implement world-class research and policy-driven solutions to address our region's most pressing challenges. We will use applied research to help local leaders identify catalytic policies, programs, and interventions, and attract greater capital to the region. What does this look like? Well, taking on big problems such as climate resiliency, critical infrastructure like broadband access, homelessness, housing affordability, and health equity. These are all regional challenges that require a massive collective effort. We have to break down the silos that do more to divide us than unite us. We have to build a multi-jurisdictional team for San Diego, and we have to succeed. Our future simply depends upon it. All of us know that San Diegans are some of the most generous people in the world, and their donations to nonprofits make a difference to many San Diegans. But if philanthropy generally aids those in need, better policies change the system to eradicate the need. That's why the San Diego Foundation has assembled a world-class team of experts to help guide our learning and our work. I am so pleased to announce that the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center and the Brookings Institution have formed a new long-term partnership. The Brookings Institution is the world's leading think tank, sought out and respected by national and global leaders for its in-depth research and that leads to new ideas for solving problems facing society. The Brookings Institution has dedicated a team of its scholars who, for the first time in its history, will focus on place-based research and policy right here in San Diego. I could not be more excited. These are some of the brightest minds in the world. The resources that this invaluable and vital partnership bring to our region are unprecedented for San Diego. We will learn from the best on how to tackle some of our greatest challenges, attract new partners and resources to the region, and share what we learn with a national audience. Our work begins immediately. Tomorrow, we'll be convening a group of regional leaders from San Diego County, our 18 municipalities and regional agencies to discuss, among other topics, the most effective ways to leverage federal recovery and infrastructure funding to support regional growth and innovation. Thank you to the Brookings Institution for investing in San Diego, and thank you to our supporting partners, the County of San Diego, the City of Chula Vista, and the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation. We also thank our contributing partners, as well as the members of the Center's Government and Agency Advisory Council and our Board of Governors for their leadership and engagement. Now, I'm so pleased to be joined here today by Nathan Fletcher, Chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, whose leadership and drive helped to create this new center. He encourages us to think about bold solutions and transformational approaches to persistent problems and has agreed to chair the center's Government and Agency Advisory Council. Mark Cafferty, President and CEO of the San Diego Regional EDC, who was instrumental in laying the groundwork for this historic collaboration. Shalini Vajhala, the center's new executive director, and John Allen, president of the Brookings Institution. The life work of John Allen greatly surpasses a soundbite, so please indulge us. General Allen is a retired U.S. Marine Corps four-star general and former commander of the NATO International Security Assistance Force and U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He's the co-author of several books, Turning Point, Policy Making in the Era of Artificial Intelligence, as well as Future War and the Defense of Europe. General Allen served in two senior diplomatic roles following his retirement from the Marine Corps. First, as senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense on Middle East security, during which he led the security dialogue for the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. President Barack Obama then appointed Allen as special presidential envoy to the global coalition to counter ISIL. His diplomatic efforts grew the coalition to 65 members, effectively halting the expansion of ISIL. In recognition of this work, he was presented with the Department of State Distinguished Honor Award by Secretary John Kerry and the Director of National Intelligence Distinguished Public Service Award by Director James Clapper. General Allen's first tour as a general officer was as the principal director of the Asia Pacific Policy Office at the Secretary of Defense, a position he held for nearly 3 years during the George W. Bush administration. In this assignment, he was involved extensively with policy initiatives involving China, Taiwan, Mongolia, and Southeast Asia. Among his other affiliations, General Allen serves on the Global Commission for Post-Pandemic Policy and is a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. General Allen is the recipient of numerous U.S. and foreign military awards. He is the 2015 co-recipient of the Business Executives for National Security Eisenhower Award and the 2020 recipient of the Czech-Slovak Transatlantic Award for his work on strengthening democracy in Central and Eastern Europe. Please welcome the Brookings Institution President, John Allen.
Mark, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. But also thank you for the incredibly inspiring words that you have just left us to think about this incredible moment that we're all experiencing together. As Mark said, I'm John Allen, and I'm the president of the Brookings Institution. Before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the San Diego Foundation team and the entire San Diego community for welcoming the Brookings Institution, albeit today virtually, but soon in person. Having nearly 40 years of service in the U.S. Marine Corps, this community has always had a very special place in my heart, especially the Marine Corps Recruit Depot and the 32nd Street Naval Station. My father was a Navy officer, and my family and I have a very rich association with San Diego, and I hope to visit your wonderful city very soon. Today, I'm thrilled to appear alongside some of the most dedicated and energized community and local leaders of San Diego. Back in October 2019, Vice President of the Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program, Amy Liu, and I participated in a major forum hosted by Mark Cafferty and the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation, where we spoke at length on the importance of an inclusive economy. 2 years later, such a topic could not be more important, especially as we've all witnessed how the COVID-19 pandemic has laid bare the many fault lines within America's society and economy. Seeing how economic inequality affects our cities like San Diego, it becomes imperative that we build back our economy in a way that benefits all, not just some of us. Our event today has convened some of the most innovative and forward-thinking of San Diego's local leadership. With their hard work, talent, and ingenuity, they have committed to do their very best by this community, collaborating across the private, the public, the nonprofit, and even university sectors to ensure this dynamic binational city works closely with its bordering city of Tijuana, Mexico, in an economy that is inclusive for every person who calls this area home. Across almost every dimension, the San Diego region reflects the best our country has to offer, and well done to you. It has a dynamic economy powered by world-class universities and entrepreneurs, as well as a robust defense sector that continues to play an important role within and among the innovative communities. The diversity of this workforce reflects not just the face of America today, but the future of America as well. And with each year, the city becomes a new home for a new generation of immigrants, making America better every single year, all of whom are seeking their American dream. San Diego's binational relationship with the city of Tijuana is also indicative of the power of a global partnership. And together, through shared development projects and economic interests, this relationship between San Diego and Tijuana is both emblematic and reinforces the importance of North American trade as enshrined in the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the USMCA. Finally, and most importantly, this is a region where local leaders recognize that our challenges are bigger than any single city or department or agency. And I want to take this moment to applaud all of the local leaders for stepping up in this critical current moment of a global crisis. And I want to recognize their resounding willingness to look for solutions that are both strategically beneficial and locally proactive in nature. Now, in that same spirit, I'm pleased and deeply honored to announce that Brookings will be joining forces with the San Diego community to launch the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center. It goes without saying how much we at Brookings are eager to partner with this community and to contribute to the growth of a more prosperous, inclusive, and resilient region. With over 100 of our own years of history, as one of the world's premier nonpartisan research think tanks, Brookings has always sought to support the public good. Through Brookings' presidential research priorities, we've addressed head-on some of the greatest challenges of the 21st century, such as artificial intelligence and other emerging and disruptive technologies, the future of the American middle class, climate change, and crucially, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in America. More, Brookings has also worked closely with policymakers and practitioners over the decades to deliver tangible results. As a think tank, we have long understood the importance and the impact of place-based work. A prime example are the efforts of the Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program, which has had success in providing research that drives tangible and scalable solutions for communities. Having had a now multi-year effort in the city of Indianapolis, the collaboration between scholars of Brookings Metro and Indiana's state partners led to the commitment of hundreds of millions of dollars to its industrial transformation and workforce development efforts. We're also proud of our research, which was used in Massachusetts to help unlock more housing development in transit-accessible neighborhoods. Additionally, our national trade study has informed multi-year, multi-billion-dollar federal programs to help build freight projects in critical regions. Still, the launch of the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center is unique, as it is the first of its kind undertaking intended to create a deep place-based engagement with a city. And we are eager to support the many local leaders that are doing the hard work of building a more equitable economy, preparing and building a more diverse workforce, and addressing affordability and investing head-on in climate resilience. Congratulations and well done to you all. And as we enter a decade of new federal attention to investment in infrastructure, San Diego has a chance to set a new direction and an example for local governments to tackle cross-sector, multi-jurisdictional challenges, becoming a model city for all across the country. We're confident that San Diego offers the same essential ingredients to deliver transformative change for its citizens and will be very much a city on the hill for all Americans. Addressing climate resilience, critical infrastructure, homelessness, housing affordability, and more, no single agency's job. is no single agency's job, but they are everyone's challenge and many people's realities. We at Brookings could not be more excited than for this chance to roll up our sleeves with this wonderful community, all with an eye to develop practical on-the-ground solutions together. With that, I'd like to hand the floor over to the next speaker, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, who is the chair of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. Sir, the floor is yours, and thank you again for this wonderful opportunity to join you all virtually today. Congratulations and well done.
Thank you, General Allen. This may be the first time in history we've ever had a four-star general hand the mic to a former staff sergeant. It is a tremendous honor to join with Brookings today. And General Allen, thank you. Moment of personal privilege. We served in overlapping times, obviously at vastly different ranks, but there was a generation of my Marines, boots on the ground, who saw what you did and appreciated the way you carried and conducted yourself as a Marine Corps general, but also the commitment to service that has transcended your time in uniform. And we are eternally grateful to you for your willingness to continue to serve in this capacity and for the leadership role at Brookings. Today's a great day for San Diego. It's an encouraging day for us as a region to have this partnership with the Brookings Institution to launch the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center, and to really celebrate this tremendous partnership with a world-class institution known globally, and to bring not just local elected officials like myself, but to really partner with the San Diego Foundation. And Mark undersold what the foundation meant to San Diego County during the height of COVID. As chair of the Board of Supervisors, every day as we were confronting this pandemic, when we had an insurmountable or intractable problem, I would call Mark Stuart and the San Diego Foundation and say, I need you to help. And the answer was always yes. And the answer was always, we can do it bigger and better and faster. And whether we were talking about bridging the digital divide to get kids connected to the internet for virtual schools, economic assistance for most impacted communities, time and again, regardless of the issue, the San Diego Foundation stepped up. And we would not have been able to have the response we had in our region without them. And I think it really highlights the vital role of the collaboration that must happen between local government, state government, federal government, our nonprofit partners, our business leaders, our community leaders. And so it's wonderful to join Mark and the foundation, General Allen and the Brookings Institution to tackle these. San Diego is not fundamentally dissimilar from our nation and world in the size and scope of the challenges we have to face. We have to confront and address the devastating impacts of climate change. In some measure, we are mitigating the negative impacts of what has already happened while also trying to take action to not exacerbate those more. But a part of that tackling of climate change is transitioning to a carbon neutral economy. And as we transition to that carbon neutral economy, there are tremendous economic opportunities. As a governor's appointee to the Air Resources Board, we confront daily the opportunity from zero emission vehicles, from less polluting sources, from renewable energy. But we have an obligation to make sure we do that in an economically just and viable way, working to make sure we're not just building a healthier planet, but a stronger and healthier middle class, and addressing issues of economic justice, taking a lot of the work that Brookings has laid out on an inclusive economy, making sure we're providing that opportunity. We know we have to invest in infrastructure, and it's wonderful as a local elected official to watch our federal leaders now talking about physical infrastructure and human infrastructure, and the need to invest in both of those as we not just build our bridges and roads and airports, but as we build the foundation of our society, investing in each other. We're all cognizant and aware of the work that remains around issues of racial justice, environmental justice, and the very serious obligation that I know I feel to do my part to make sure that my wife and I, that our 5 children, I hand them a nation where I've done everything I can to put us on a path to a more perfect union. And I fundamentally believe the opportunity of the American dream is that anyone who works hard can find success. And while I don't believe there's anything in equality of outcome of the American dream, there has to foundationally be equality of access to the American dream, which means that every child, regardless of their parents' education level, the income, the color of their skin, the zip code, the country of birth, every child must be afforded quality education, clean air and clean water, access to healthcare, so many of the things where I think we are impeding our ability to fulfill that commitment to equality of opportunity. If we want to have an American dream, then every single child in every neighborhood from every country has to have access to those same opportunities, which is where that vital investment, I think, comes in tackling issues of equity and fundamentally understanding the difference between equality and equity and addressing those failings of previous decades to make sure we are over investing in those places that have been left behind to get to that point where every child has a chance of success. And I think our San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center can really help us do that. Can help us here locally as we look at the inequities that were highlighted by COVID. COVID did not cause them, but it highlighted them in a way that we cannot look away. The health inequities, the economic inequities, look at the racial polarization nature of who was more likely to get COVID and die from COVID. And we have to commit to not just say, well, we're going to work our way through COVID and move on, but make sure that we steered into our consciousness of the things that we saw and that drive us and motivate us towards moving forward. And a lot of this work is very hard. It's very difficult. Every day as I walk into my office, I have a whiteboard and it says, we only do hard things because in our office, we say we only do hard things. You're never out of the fight and fortune favors the bold. And I think that is the mantra that we have to seize to really look for how do we structurally and fundamentally do these things and address these problems. But as a region, while we've had success with our mayor, working together with our county, with our state officials, we're seeing tremendous progress on a variety of things. Mobile crisis response team, community harm reduction teams, economic opportunity, a regional decarbonization plan, us realigning our county government. We've had success. There's an area that we need to build, and that is our federal partnerships. And that ability to draw from the expertise, the knowledge, the connections that a respected institution like the Brookings institution brings to us. And that is a vital step for us. And so we're so grateful for this partnership. And we're really grateful for the collaboration of what we have and where we can go moving forward. At the County of San Diego is the largest governing entity in San Diego County. In January, we adopted my framework for the future, tackling issues of racial justice, economic justice, health equity, environmental justice, driving towards the economy of the future with good paying jobs, with healthy jobs, our partnerships, not only with our allies from environmental groups to business groups, economic groups, to organized labor, and so many others. We have a ways to go. And I know that all of the efforts we're striving to, both as a county, as a head of our transit agency, of everything that we're doing here, there's an unprecedented opportunity to really leverage the federal opportunities that are there to get our region moving forward together and working so closely. And so I just want to say a thank you to the San Diego Foundation, to Brookings Institution, General Allen, Mark Cafferty. I want to say a special thank you to Susan Gwynn. Susan Gwynn, a leader at the San Diego Foundation. It was our early conversations where she said, hey, I have an idea. I think we could partner with an institution like Brookings. I think we could pull this together. And it was Susan's vision, her leadership, her perseverance. If you know Susan, you know she's very persistent in the most positive and meaningful way to help our region, and a dear friend. And so Susan, Mark Stuart, Mark Cafferty, everyone who's involved, I am honored to join in this effort, to have helped been at the ground floor as we launch this, and really excited about the opportunities for us in the future. So with that, let me turn it over to my friend, Mark Cafferty, Executive Director of the San Diego Economic Development Center, someone with a rich history, not only leading in San Diego, but also in partnership with the Brookings Institution. Mark, it is wonderful to have you in San Diego and have your leadership on this item.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher, and thank you to everyone on the call. This is sort of a familiar scenario for me in two ways. One is that when you do any economic development work in San Diego, or any work period, you tend to only get it done when you feel like you're surrounded by colleagues and friends and partners who you can rely on. I want to pause for a minute and really not only recognize Mark Stuart for all the same reasons that Supervisor Fletcher did, but I want to recognize Supervisor Fletcher as well. Nathan and Mark, both of you have played critical roles during the past 18 months, during unprecedented times, all the ways that we can describe it. But watching you both lead and seeing you both lead and having the ability to work with both of you has been an honor during this time. And I know I speak on behalf of many, many people when I thank the foundation for the role that it has played, and I thank for the county for the role that it has played. It has allowed us to do our work in a better, more effective way at EDC, and I know that's true of many organizations. The other reason this is familiar for me today is because of Brookings. And if you were to look back at my history and time at the San Diego Regional EDC, which is about 9 years, 8 of those years, it seems like every time we were at a crossroad trying to think differently about what economic development meant to the region, whether it was trying to go global and figure out how a region like San Diego could perform better in international markets, or whether it was looking around and realizing that a rising tide was absolutely not lifting all boats in our community. And while economic indicators were surging, we're finding that more and more people were being left behind, or if it was getting connected to a network of cities and regions across the country and across the world, we're trying to think through the same sort of challenges we were thinking through. The one common denominator for us has been our partnership with Brookings, in particular, the Metropolitan Office and the Metropolitan Policy Programs at Brookings. And I can't thank Amy Liu and General Allen and their teams enough for the work they have done in helping us become a better economic development organization for this region. The other things that I want to just highlight today that really, for me, have culminated over the years in the partnership with Brookings, and why I think the work of the Policy and Innovation Center is going to be so successful, especially when we look back on it a few years from now, is that every time we've needed to have a federal perspective on something, Brookings has been our partner in helping to do that. Every time we've needed to see ground level work being done in other communities, whether it is Chicago or Birmingham, whether it is Indianapolis or Nashville, we've always been able to go to our partners at Brookings and get connected to the right people doing the right work to really see what the challenges have looked like and what the opportunities have looked like. And the final thing that I think is so critical when we think through the partnership that is happening here today is the very role that Brookings plays as a think tank. Another famous general once said that he believed that plans were useless, but planning was indispensable. And in my opinion, that's right. In the kind of work that we do, we can draw up and we can make plans, and they can sit on shelves in various places, or we can go through the process with individuals so that we know that when times change and circumstances change, the planning and the process and the partnerships are what will carry us through that. And so just as I look back often now and think that we've become a more global economy in partnership with Brookings, we've become a more inclusive economy in partnership with Brookings, I am certain that when we look back a few years from now, we'll recognize this moment as a time when we came together and started to think more critically and more collaboratively about how we reach out to the federal government, how we connect with the federal government, and ensure that San Diego, as we're trying to grow this economy in all the ways that Supervisor Fletcher just described, we're doing it for all San Diegans. We're a huge region, we're a binational region, we're a diverse region, we're an innovative region. And we know that all of those things are going to take specific plans to help us reach our full potential in all of those areas for all San Diegans. It's been an honor for us to partner with Brookings all these years, and we look very forward to this partnership as we move forward. So I want to thank everybody who's on the call today, and I believe at this time I'm supposed to turn it over to Shalini to talk next about the center.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Mark Stuart, General Allen, Supervisor Fletcher. I am delighted to be here and to be stepping into the role of Executive Director of the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center. Having spent the last 15 years in public service at the federal level and then working between the public and private sectors to develop resilient infrastructure projects around the world, I'm absolutely thrilled to have the chance to work close to home and build deep collaborative relationships with the many incredible organizations in our region. You've heard a lot about the Policy and Innovation Center's ambitions and origins and the possibilities ahead. So I want to start by being really clear about what we are not looking to do. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. There is so much good work already underway in this region. And our aim is to serve the region and develop solutions for multi-sector, multi-jurisdictional challenges that extend beyond any single city or agency's reach. These are issues like housing affordability and climate resilience that are everybody's problem, but no single person or entity's job. We see these seams between sectors as the areas of greatest need, but also the greatest opportunities for innovation. We understand that data and research are most helpful when they're connected for better outcomes for communities in need. So our immediate focus at the Policy and Innovation Center is supporting the recovery from the cascading effects of COVID-19. There's an enormous amount of federal funding available now to local governments, and even more coming over the next few years. But as a region, we need to be creative and coordinated to take advantage of these resources and make the most of this window of opportunity. We are talking about the most money since the 1930s New Deal for new infrastructure, and we cannot let this moment go to waste. So we are already co-designing new programs to bring large-scale federal recovery and infrastructure funds to the region. And we've been driving tens of millions in federal funding applications already for reducing fire and flood risk, enhancing green stormwater management, and supporting food equity. Over the long term, our vision is to craft new policy solutions in collaboration with the team at the Brookings Institution, and draw new partnerships and investment opportunities to the region. We know that collaboration is essential for developing effective, practical, and equitable solutions for improving critical infrastructure, creating stable, high-paying jobs, and most importantly, generating measurable long-term socioeconomic and environmental benefits for residents and families in the region. I could not be more excited about the potential for our region and the opportunity to serve our communities in this new role. Thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to encourage you all to put questions in the chat, and I'll be moderating a question and answer session with all of our panelists. So at this time, I'd like to invite all of our panelists to turn on their videos again. Wonderful. And I will start with a question for General Allen. General Allen, Brookings does a tremendous amount of work on the broad trends that affect cities and regions. And you've done an enormous amount on trends like urbanization, mass migration, emerging technologies that have really shifted over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you speak a little bit to these broad trends and how you think they play out for the San Diego region?
Well, first, again, it's so inspiring to hear everyone speak today, and so inspiring to consider the future of this innovation center. Look, we're really at an inflection point in so many ways in this country today. Issues associated with the disease, getting it under control is going to be vital to our future. Recovering from the economic downturn that we have all experienced as a population. But we'll do so during a time when the changes in technology, in fact, not just the fact that technology is changing, but that the rate of change of technology is so great that it's almost head spinning in some respects. So it creates challenges, but I think in the context of San Diego, with a highly diverse population, with the capabilities that are available in San Diego, I said them before, universities, the public-private partnerships, engaged leadership. These moments, I think, create a tremendous opportunity for San Diego as a city to embrace the potential future that is available to us in this moment. And I think one of the most important words that can be ascribed to this moment as we watch San Diego and other American cities continue to come to grips with issues associated with the challenges of COVID and the economic recovery and technology and this moment of racial reckoning that America is going through. I think one of the most important words is investment. We should be thinking about how we can be investing in the future of our cities across all of these areas. And I think Supervisor Fletcher and Mark Stuart and Mark Cafferty all said that this moment of crisis has exposed fault lines in our societies. And the rising tide didn't float all boats equally. So here is our chance, because those fault lines have been exposed. We know what we need to do. Resources are probably on the way. And so now with strong and insightful and nuanced investment strategies, we can, in fact, make a huge difference for this highly diverse, extremely productive community called San Diego, the greater San Diego area. So I'm very excited about this because this is that moment of inflection. And I think with the leadership that is on the screen today and the other leadership that is right behind them, this is a moment when San Diego really has the future at its feet. And it's an exciting moment. And we at Brookings are so pleased and proud to share this moment with the leaders and the people of San Diego.
Thank you so much, General Allen. I want to build on that theme of investment because I truly do believe it would be a complete failure of imagination after the last 18 months to return to the status quo. And we have such an opportunity to shift toward doing things not only differently, but aiming at transformational outcomes. And so I'd like to turn to Supervisor Fletcher next. The county has done a tremendous amount over the last 18 months, but so have organizations like SANDAC in terms of serving broad regional needs. Can you speak to why we decided to create this center when there are other structures in place already in the region?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, San Diego, we're such an incredible region. I mean, the city of San Diego, the 8th largest city in America, the 2nd largest in California. But at times we're an awful long ways away from Washington, D.C. And we have a wonderful congressional delegation and they're very engaged. But I just, in the early days of this, I saw what I hoped would be coming from the federal government. And what the federal government is doing today, and frankly, since January, has been at the local level, you know, what we've always wanted, which is that investment, right? The funding that came in originally to help us as we recovered from COVID, the pending, I am a idealist without illusion, that the pending infrastructure investment, both in physical infrastructure and human infrastructure that's coming. And what I think we really need as a region is to be able to tap into some of that national expertise and tap into that national network. And so to bring leaders like yourself, who can run the program and the effort here, who have tremendous federal experience, EPA and everything else you've done in your life that is so incredible, and who can convene us here locally, I think puts us at a strong position. Because I think, you know, General Allen hit a great point. We are at kind of this inflection or tipping point where we spent 20 years investing. We just invested in some things that did not turn out so well. And now we've got a moment where we need to turn that investment. And again, I don't view it as a look inward thing. I think we have to remain engaged in the world today, but building this foundation at home. You know, COVID, going back to what it showed us the most unequal recession we have ever had in the history of our country. While certain communities were devastated economically and health-wise, certain folks thrived and did incredible. And it really exacerbates and highlights that lack of equality of access. And so I think, you know, investing in all of the things that we've talked about, economic opportunities, one full-time job should be enough for anyone to take care of their family. Addressing issues of poverty, particularly the notion that someone who lives full-time in America lives in poverty is hard for me to wrap my head around. The issues of racial justice. Look, we're still reconciling. We did a terrible job as a country in reconciling the original sin at the founding of our country. We've never reconciled it. A child, I can look out my window right here and see a child in Barrio Loban who has asthma at 8-9 times the rate of a child when I look out over here in La Jolla. That is not a function of geography. That is a function of race. It's because it's a Black or brown child living over there in a polluted community and another. And there's nothing in the American dream that says that one group of children get asthma at 8 or 9 times the rate. Confronting the issue of misinformation and disinformation. There's disagreement of values, opinions, but there is such thing as objective fact. And so all of those investments in tackling these issues, I don't think as a region we will fulfill or make if we don't have partners like the Brookings Institution with us in the San Diego Foundation and everything else. And so that's why this partnership is so vital to us here in San Diego.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher. I think what you just described is such a lovely way of bringing data and research to that child's life. As that kid with asthma who grew up wheezing, I have always found it incredibly compelling when you can take research and bring it around to serve communities. And where you see entities like the EDC and the San Diego Foundation really recognize where there is a space in policy for nonprofits, for community organizations to play a strong role in guiding policy, but not necessarily stepping into politics. So Stuart, I'd like to turn to you with this next question, which is, is the San Diego Foundation getting involved in local politics and moving away from its mission? Or how do you see this face toward policy in a new way?
Thanks, Shalini. So first, that answer is no, and no in capital letters, NO. Like many of the 800 community foundations in the United States, we began as a community bank, a place for individuals, companies, nonprofits to hold charitable funds that be deployed for future use. And we'll always focus on being a strong community bank, but we're now going to work on being a community change maker too. The launch of the San Diego Regional Policy and Innovation Center is closely tied to the San Diego Foundation strategic plan, specifically its pillar dedicated to building resilient communities. For San Diego region to thrive and grow into the future, we need a focused approach on solving our region's biggest challenges, from the digital divide, as you've talked, to housing, to climate resiliency and a crumbling infrastructure. The foundation is committed to its regional role as a community bank, but it also embraces its responsibility as a change maker and stepping into that role as a regional agenda enabler with the Policy and Innovation Center.
I love that framing of an agenda enabler. Thank you, Mark. We've got a few questions here coming in from media and the audience on how we'll identify priorities and really pursue funding to this theme of investment that we started off with. And I'd like to start with the priorities question and then pass it to you, Mark Cafferty, because I think you'll be able to expand on this. We have a three-part approach to identifying priorities here. The first is we are going to be looking from the bottom up to be responsive to regional needs. And so we are hosting a government and agency workshop tomorrow and looking to listen and learn. What is most important? Where are the unmet needs? Where are the funding gaps? And how can the center help bridge those gaps and create the bridge to DC in collaboration with Brookings? And so we have a set of bottom-up priorities. From the top, we're looking to be resourceful. There is an enormous amount of federal funding already flowing. We are talking about money that is here and needs to be spent well over the coming years. And we're also talking about billions of dollars more, as Supervisor Fletcher said, for physical and human infrastructure. And the regions that'll benefit most from this money are those that are resourceful, those that are coordinated, and those that can absolutely swing for the fences. I need to put a baseball analogy in here for Mark. And so we are going to be responsive, we're going to be resourceful, but in collaboration with Brookings, we are also going to be strategic. We are looking to set priorities around those things that you wouldn't see just by following the money or just by looking at what's broken now. And I'll give an example. If we think about the last 18 months, there have been a number of folks who have not been able to afford their water and electricity bills, critical services, and an underlying foundation for public health. This was a problem before the pandemic, affordability of these bills, and it will remain a problem after. But what we have learned over the last 18 months through the process of helping the most vulnerable is where we can target new infrastructure investments to reduce those costs by investing in water efficiency, energy efficiency, building improvements linked to not only affordability, but regional resilience. And so we plan to set priorities by listening from the bottom up, by following the money from the top down, but also really stepping into the strategic missing middle of what wouldn't we think to do without the opportunities that have been surfaced through the last 18 months. And so I want to pass it to Mark to add on to this, because you really have been focused on how to both set priorities in the region and learn from outside the region.
No, and I think, thank you for that. And I think you actually did a really great job of answering the framework of a few questions that I've seen in the chat function. The way that I think this is supposed to work, when we see it work well anywhere, is when we look around and you sort of recognize the pieces fitting together like a puzzle. So the San Diego Foundation to the letter of what you just described, did a fantastic job during the course of the pandemic in really just kind of listening to the community, engaging with the community, and figuring out where the needs were, the most pressing needs then. The equally impressive thing has been to watch them try to think about where the region is moving to now and where the most pressing needs continue to be. But the San Diego Foundation alone cannot cover this entire region. No one foundation can, no one business group can. Our community colleges can't address all workforce development issues. The Workforce Partnership cannot address all workforce development issues. But side by side, sort of working collaboratively to recognize who can do what, and who are the great organizations in the community already at the forefront of that work, who might need more funding and might need more support. And then where and when are there opportunities that we've just been missing? Where and when are the opportunities for us to look at some of the federal money that's available right now and have already identified the places where it could best benefit the region and who the key players are who could drive that change at the local level, and then have an entity that we could turn to that could go after that funding. Sometimes I think one of the challenges for us in San Diego is no one quite wanting to lead in that space. Nobody quite wanting to maybe ruffle the feathers too much to say, we're going to lead on this particular issue. And I think having an entity that can do that in partnership with all of us is truly a missing piece of that puzzle. And I think we will be a much stronger region with a much stronger economy because of the types of strategies you were just talking about.
Thanks, Mark. Mark Stuart, you have a great analogy when I mentioned that the region has so much good work underway, and there are a lot of puzzle pieces that we have here, but they don't always fit together. And you took that metaphor and extended it beautifully. Can I pass it back to you for that?
Well, as you think about it, when you sit down to do a puzzle, 500 pieces, 1,000 pieces, 50 pieces, you've got this great image on the top of the box of what is that finished picture and image look like, and how do I represent it? Where do I estimate or think about some of these pieces fit in? On some of these issues, we just don't have the puzzle piece. We just don't have that image of where it's going to, what it looks like and where we're going to go. And the beautiful thing about having the Brookings Institution join us is this research is going to start to unveil what that image will look like and point us in a direction, and all based on research, data, everything coming to us in a nonpartisan capacity, the things that we shouldn't have to argue over. And then we need to then think about it, okay, how do we take everything that we're getting from Brookings and build that bridge to our communities and to our leaders, funders, national partners as well, who say, let's see if we can make this work in San Diego and export it to other places around the country.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. We've got a question that came in here in the chat, and I'm going to build a bridge over to you, General Allen. The question is, will the center decide on a need and a plan and then find funding to address that need, or will the dollars drive what our needs and plans are? And my answer to this is yes. And I want to hand it over to you because I think Brookings does an incredible job of balancing between responding to short-term urgent crises, but also keeping a very long view on where data and research can help us rethink our needs and find new solutions. Can you speak a little bit to that balance?
Well, I almost couldn't do better than what you just said. One of the great things about the Metropolitan Policy Program, led by Amy Liu, is they are eye deep in data all the time. And there's a certain happy truth to data. We used to say we can have differing opinions, but we can't have different facts. Well, in the world that we live in today, often because of, I think the word misinformation was used, there's misinformation and there's disinformation. And it has skewed facts. It has made truthfulness sometimes difficult to understand, but there's a beauty to data. And Metro, as we call it, Metro does a magnificent job in both collecting, analyzing, and employing data to provide thoughts on both short-term and long-term strategies. So I'm very excited about that dimension of this relationship, because that's something we do very well, which is to collect and analyze the kinds of data that can support Supervisor Fletcher and Mark Stuart, Mark Cafferty, and you, of course, at the center itself. The other thing that we're doing at Brookings is work on USMCA. You know, if you were to ask people around the country and around the world, tell us about North America, they don't think of Mexico necessarily as being part of North America. And we have to think of Mexico as a critical dimension of the North American economic system. And the work that we're doing on USMCA has pulled in Canadian, American, and Mexican leaders. And here's the perfect example of that going on right now between San Diego and Tijuana. So I'm very excited about that being another dimension of the work that we can do, not just the work that Brookings can bring directly to bear in terms of data analysis and planning support for San Diego, but strengthening this concept that North America is very much a product of Mexican contributions as well as American and Canadian, because that's often lost in the conversation. And we've got to change that narrative. And we want to help you to do that.
That's tremendous. And I think, General Allen, you actually answered a question about our plans for better integrating our binational region. We are in a very unique place where local government involves foreign policy. So Supervisor Fletcher, General Allen picked up on the thread of misinformation and the importance of data, and your leadership here has been invaluable in the region. One of the priorities for the center is around climate resilience. And in my work over the last 15 years, when you are successful at something like building resilience to climate change, success is often something that doesn't happen. So in my former federal life, that meant in the first year you're applauded, in the second year your budget goes away, and in the third year you lose your job. And I think these kinds of fundamental problems where you're really trying to fix structural barriers to inequality or dealing with baseline improvements, the county's done a lot to actually work on improving data and dealing with misinformation and disinformation. Can you speak a little to that and where you see this center as fitting into that space?
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. I think I mentioned earlier the things that are written on outside my door. One of them says we only do hard things, and easy things have already been done, or easy things aren't a problem. And so when you're going to tackle issues of misinformation or disinformation, it's hard, and you're going to enrage and they are, as General Allen pointed, very, very different, misinformation versus disinformation, but nonetheless having a corrosive impact on our ability to even have a substantive debate where we're talking about differences of ideology and values. When we're talking about Shalini, as you mentioned, tackling the issue of climate change, that means you have to do something fundamentally different than the way you've done it before. And in government, we have money, rights, land, influence. It is not a continuum, it is a pie. And that pie has already been divvied up. And so as you say, we're going to tackle climate change, that means we're going to change the configuration of the pie. That means we're going to invest more money, and we're going to do something that we didn't do before, which means we're not going to do something we did before, which means there will inherently be some winners and some losers, which means there will be some opposition. And so every time an elected official stands before you and said, this is my bold transformative idea that nobody opposes, sometimes you have to question, is it bold and transformative, or is it merely a continuation of the status quo with a little bit smoother edges? And so that doesn't mean that we gratuitously go out and just fight with people. I'm not in any way suggesting that. It doesn't mean you don't take into a perfect example, Shalini, that you'll know well from the environmental space. As we talk about transitioning out of a fossil fuel economy and moving into renewable sources of energy, if you do not engage the building trades whose career and livelihood are vested on the jobs that came out of that industry, and you don't bring them in early and say your job will be different. You are a pipe fitter, but instead of fitting natural gas pipes, you're going to fit carbon sequestration pipes, but your pension is going to be okay, your wages are going to be okay, your job's going to be okay. If you don't do that out of the outset, you're not going to have the political coalition to get it through.
That's right.
And two, you won't be doing right because you'll be tackling environmental justice, but not economic justice. And so where I think the opportunity really lies is let's take the data and the science to tell us where to go, and then let's build a coalition that is big enough to actually make that happen. Because there are a few problems we don't know how to solve. We don't have the courage or the coalition big enough to actually do them. And to your point, to see them through changes in administration or changes in staffing. And that's where I think a group like this can be so vitally helpful, to build that coalition, to get those folks together, and to recognize that structural change is hard. And I will say, as a county, we are doing well, but I will say it hasn't been without consternation. And so we can't fear that. Again, we can bring people in, we can try to make it work, but we're talking about fundamental change and realigning, and sometimes that's going to be at times a little controversial. And nothing of any. Look at the things we look back on: Voting Rights Act, Clean Water Act. None of those were without controversy or difficulty. And so it's convening data, leading a path, building a coalition, helping empower folks like myself to go out and help drive those changes.
I think that's fantastic, Supervisor Fletcher, and it responds to some of the workforce questions that have been coming up here also, which the term that I've heard used to great effect is making just transitions, where you bring everyone along and you don't assume that folks will suddenly make the shift to a new economy. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and so I could not be more grateful to be a San Diego resident. But I appreciate that there were a whole generation of folks where the economy moved on without them. And that would be, like I said, a failure of imagination if we could not solve this and think about where we're going and how to bring everyone along. So I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative to wrap up with one final question that's kind of echoed in a few comments in the chat, which is, how are we going to work with grassroots organizations? So where is our funding coming from, and how are we going to work with grassroots organizations? We are incredibly grateful to be launching this center with support from the County of San Diego and Supervisor Fletcher's leadership at the EDC and the City of Chula Vista. And we will be raising federal funds for the region. So we anticipate pulling in all different colors of money to support projects in the region and our own operations. And in terms of working with partners locally, everything we do will rely on collaboration. I started by saying we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We're not looking to displace good work. We're looking to help those puzzle pieces fit together better, to really get a view of what the picture on the box could be, not just what it was. And to be able to engage with grassroots organizations. So I would encourage any of you who still had questions left over, please email Jenny Kirch, jennyk@sdfoundation.org for any of your questions. We will be following up, and we are keen to hear from you, to learn from you, and to work with you moving forward. So with that, I want to thank our entire esteemed panel. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to work with you all and to serve the region.